It's Friday night, party hopping, feeling alright, booty shaking on the floor. Pump that jam while I'm getting down. Just got paid. Friday night, party hopping, feeling right, booty shaking.
Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. Happy Friday, guys. Just got paid Friday night. What's up and welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays and Fridays, and you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Fridays, and Sundays. And I'm in a bit of a silly mood because I was jamming to that song. Now, it's an older song. You know, my parents used to play this song, but I still like to jam to it. Friday night, just got paid. Friday night. All right. Anywho, shout out to all of you watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and not Rumble. Crap. I forgot about Rumble. Shoot. All right. I forgot to add Rumble to the stream, but I'll just upload the stream afterwards. But anyway, welcome, guys. We do have a bit to cover tonight. I do have a hard stop tonight, so I want to make sure I'm just going to dive right into the stories instead of getting shout outs to people in the chat, except I do want to go ahead and acknowledge A. Hill, who just became a Sabby member. Let's give A. Hill a big whoop, whoop. All right. Shout out to A. Hill. Let's go ahead and dive in. We're going to jump right in, guys. We're going to jump right in. So let's go ahead and give a shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. I want to make sure that I'm actually staying on time tonight because I'm notorious with not doing that. And sometimes I need to. Shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you so much for your support. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: Ultimate, Sabinators, Sabsters, Sabbies, lots of Sabbies, and members. All of their names are listed here, and you can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. And I shouted out the newbies last night, so I just need to make sure I add them in. It has been a busy day. Busy day. Really want to shout out something really quick. I do not want to forget about this. There is going to be a protest against Richie Torres. So the Bronx Greens are not playing around, and they have some things to say to Richie. This isn't the first time they've approached Congressman Richie Torres, but that's going to be next week. I'll make sure I'll show the graphic for that at the end of the show, because Richie Torres is already smearing them on Twitter, already smearing them. But there's a reason for that, especially if you look at Richie's funding. Let's go ahead and show that beautiful thumbnail, folks, and go ahead and dive into that. I think I did a good job with this thumbnail. I think I did okay. You think so? What are we discussing tonight, ladies and gentlemen? Tonight, we are discussing Cornel West is attacked. And the woman that you see in that green square next to him, that is Nicole Hannah Jones. We're going to get into that. We're also going to discuss David Pakman is called out. Oh, I forgot I switched the pictures, but I didn't switch the words. Whatever. David Pakman is called out in reference to Israel and Palestine. I think you need to see this. We're also going to discuss Joe Biden's cringe address. So he did address the nation about that conflict as well. And he's getting a lot of pushback on this address and on this issue. And we're also going to discuss the financial crisis of 2023, and this time from a different angle. So I want to go ahead and get into those stories. So I want to start with the financial crisis story. Typically, when I've talked about financial crisis on the show, I've referred to the housing market or I referred to student loan debt, right? And those are still factors. But someone sent this to me yesterday that there's another issue that's happening with the financial crisis that may not actually be receiving enough attention. So I have an article here with some graphs I want to show you. And I also have a quick video I want to show you about this as well. Some of you may have heard of the repo man. The repo man is the man to come and repossess your car. Your car is usually repossessed because you cannot continue to pay the car payments. Sometimes the cars have been repossessed because there's been boots that have been put onto people's cars for not paying parking tickets. And then it's a whole process to get your car back. So my car was booted one time. This was a couple years ago. It's a whole process that you have to go through to get your car back. If you get a boot on it, or if they tow it away with the boot on it, you have to pay for them to cut the boot off. You have to pay the tow truck company who towed the car, and you have to pay the parking ticket. So I think when it happened to me, and it happened to me because I had a lot of parking tickets in Boston, and it was one of those things where I was like, I will pay it next time, and time went by, and next thing I knew, you only need 5. So if you get 5, then they will come and put a boot on your car and they'll tow your car. So anyway, I ended up paying, I think, almost $500. Yeah. It's an expensive thing if it happens to you. But I'm here to tell you, if it happened to me, it can happen to you. But the car repossession issue is actually bigger than people may realize. I want to get into this article here. With car repossessions and home foreclosures rising, some Americans are living on a financial cliff. Now, everybody pay attention to this. A growing number of Americans have found themselves strapped for cash and looking for financial relief as the U.S. economy slows down. And you can see there's the card there. A 57-year-old single mother living in East Hartford, Connecticut, Lesage needs to drive herself to medical appointments for injuries on her legs and to pick up her teenage daughter, who often suffers from seizures, from school. I have to go pick her up. Without the vehicle, she adds, I wouldn't be able to do that. Last year, Lesage was told her car was at risk of repossession after she fell behind on payments. For me, every penny counts. And just to lose a couple of cents on gas is devastating sometimes. Lesage is among a growing number of Americans who have found themselves confronting financial hardship as the U.S. economy has slowed. On Thursday, the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis reported gross domestic product fell to 1.1% in the first quarter, the lowest reading in 9 months. The GDP is the value of the final goods and services produced in the country and a strong indicator of how healthy the U.S. economy is. Strapped for cash, the slowdown is starting to show in Americans' personal finances. According to a recent survey from Bankrate, 49% of U.S. adults have less savings compared to a year ago. 10% of those surveyed said they have no savings at all. So I want to pause here for just a second. What this means is that a lot of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. And if you don't have any savings and you have something happen, like let's say your car is in danger of being repossessed, or your car breaks down and you have to pay for repairs, or you have a medical expense that you need to pay for. This is where these people would typically get into trouble if they don't have any savings on the side, right? So what often happens? 2 things. One, they will forego payments on another bill to take care of the car issue, especially if they need the car to get to work, or the medical issue. 2, people will put it on credit cards. If you have a credit card, but this will lead to credit card debt as well. So you're really not getting yourself out of the debt, right? And three, I lied, there's three. Three, payday loan places. Now, these places, I have complained about them before because they really are just loan sharks. It's a ripoff, it's a scam, and they prey on people who are vulnerable and really need cash right away. So oftentimes that'll happen. People will go to the payday loan place to get the money that they need to take care of that unexpected expense. And then when you get paid again, you have to go back and you have to pay what you borrowed, but you also have to pay more on top of that, right? That's how those companies make money. But payday loan places are a scam. So this is something to think about when people don't have savings. Let's go down to here, savings slump. After jumping to nearly 34% during the pandemic, the personal saving rate is now roughly an eighth of that. I want to show you here. We'll start with 2020 and you'll see more people, or people had more savings then. But as we go down here, 2021, 2022, and we get to 2023, you can see there's a huge decrease in reference to savings for Americans in this country in 2023 when you compare it to 2022, 2021, and 2020. Let's go down here. Meanwhile, home foreclosure filings have begun to surge, according to data from ATTOM, a property analytics company. U.S. foreclosure filings totaled 95,712 in the first quarter of 2023. That's 6% higher than in the previous quarter and 22% higher than a year ago. Now, this reminds me of 2008. Here we go again with the housing. And I warned people that this was coming. Here we go again with the housing crisis. So more Americans are foreclosing on their homes once again. March alone saw 36,617 U.S. properties in foreclosure, a 20% increase compared to February and 10% higher than a year ago. It was the 23rd consecutive month with a year-over-year increase in foreclosure activity. Look at this. Housing debt is up across multiple categories, reaching 16.9 trillion in quarter four of 2022. So we're going to scooch over these by color. So blue is mortgage, green is auto loan, yellow is credit card debt, orange is student loan debt, and gray is other. So I'm assuming like if you had medical debt, that would be included in the gray category, right? So this is starting from 2004 and going to the end of 2022. Let's start the back. Let's start with other. So you can see the difference here with other, right? Like it's obviously it has increased. And again, I think I would include medical debt in that under other. Student loan debt. Of course, we know that one was going to increase. That one soared. Credit card debt. Credit card debt is lower than student loan debt and other. But a lot of times the credit card debt is coming from the fact that people don't have money to pay for these other expenses, right? So they're putting things on their credit card. And then there's the auto loan, which is green. Again, this is 2004 to the end of 2022. And then you'll see the big one here, the mortgage debt. So household debt is increasing, again, reaching to 16.9 trillion in quarter four of 2022. In an emailed statement, Adam CEO Rob Barber noted some of the increase in foreclosure activity can be explained by lenders working through a backlog that had built up while the pandemic era federal foreclosure moratorium was in place. That pause ended in July of 2021. Now, remember, I want to connect this to the homelessness crisis too, because I also told you that the homeless rate has increased by 25% since Joe Biden has been president. So all of this is connected, all of it. By that point, he said an estimated 2 million homeowners had fallen behind on their home loans amid job losses and other hardships brought on by the pandemic. Now, see, This would not have been a problem if the US would have done what New Zealand did. If the US, instead of giving us those measly stimulus checks as if that was supposed to be a life-changing thing, if the US government would have given people monthly recurring checks during the pandemic, then people wouldn't have fallen behind. Overall, Barber said the increase since then hasn't been nearly as severe as some economists and industries experts expected. Many homeowners benefited from a strong pandemic-era economic rebound, one that included a year-long home buying spree during a period of low interest rates. Unemployment also remains at historic lows. The relative job stability has allowed many delinquent homeowners to catch up on mortgage payments. But again, when they talk about the unemployment rate, I do want to remind you, Joe Biden removed people from unemployment. So don't forget that. So obviously, if you're kicking people off of unemployment, of course, the rates are going to decrease. You also have to know who is not included when we talk about unemployment rates. So like if you're an adult, but you live with your parents, you're not included in that unemployment rate. This is something to know. They're looking at people who are head of household. So if you're 24 years old, let's say you just graduated college, you moved back in with your parents and you're applying to jobs, but you don't have a job yet. A lot of people went through that. You're not considered in the unemployment rate because you're not the head of household. That's why I always say the unemployment rate is actually higher than what they say it is. As home prices have skyrocketed over the past couple of years, homeowner equity has increased. Something Barber said has provided an incentive for delinquent homeowners to find a way to get back up to date on their loans. Revolving credit, the bulk of which is credit card debt, has reached all decade highs. Starting with 2013, you will see if we go to 2023, look at how high credit card debt is now. And that's because, again, during the pandemic, for those who lost their jobs, again, how did people pay for things? How did some people pay their electric bill, right? They put these things on their credit cards. So that's part of it. But this is what happens a lot of times when people are strapped for cash. And there's one more piece I want to show you here before we go to the video. Oh, where did I go? Oh, here we go. Because I want to tell you about where you can find help. Help is indeed available for homeowners, said Sarah Bowling Mancini, a senior staff attorney at the nonprofit National Consumer Law Center. Some of those resources include the Homeowners Assistance Fund, a pandemic support program. Mancini said homeowners should be proactive in talking to their lender or mortgage servicer, most of which have forbearance programs available that can help distressed homeowners buy some time. So I did want to let you know about that. Now, we're going to get back to the car repossession issue because, I don't think a lot of people know this is happening. I didn't know about this until it was David who actually sent this to me. And this is about millions of cars just repossessed, the car crisis of 2023. And again, this video was posted 1 month ago, but this again goes to show you that people are still strapped for cash. Listen to this clip.
Hey, what's up, guys? John here. Over 200,000 cars per month are now being repossessed. And
200,000 vehicles are now being repossessed.
Roughly 8% of all car loans are more than 90 days delinquent.
We're seeing a pretty big uptick in repossessions.
What do you say dramatic uptick? Can you put some numbers behind that?
Yeah, I think this is just for the business that we do, right? We're seeing it grow about 5% every month.
We are witnessing what I believe is going to be one of the greatest rug pulls in the auto market in U.S. history. Currently, we are already seeing a dramatic rise in these repossessions as interest rates continue to rise. And what we are likely going to continue to see is this situation right here, these delinquencies rising past the extent of which we saw during the great financial crisis in 2006, 2007, and 2008. But what I'm going to show you next is going to blow your mind. If you have a car or you're thinking about buying a new car, here's exactly what's happening. Please hit the like button. When you hit the like button, YouTube's going to share this content to educate more people about what's really going on in the U.S. economy. And if you want to fix your credit, you want to prepare yourself for the greatest opportunity to buy a new car, maybe a new truck, maybe a work vehicle. The time to buy is going to be right in front of us. You're going to want great credit. Go to greatcreditfast.com. Even if you have a late payment, medical bill, collection, foreclosure, even an auto repossession on your credit report, great financial crisis. You know what's very fascinating is 2019 auto vehicles, their payments about $300 a month for a used car, $360, $370, $323. That was the normal back then. And that was only 4 years ago. New cars, about $500, right? Nationwide, about $500, $550. Now,
so that's important to note, guys.
Now what we're seeing is the average monthly payment, $725 per month. $725 per month, with roughly 17% of every single car you see on the road with an auto loan being over $1,000 a month just on their auto payment, not including car insurance, gas, nothing. $1,000 a month.
Let me pause there for a second because I've never owned a brand new car. I've always had used cars my whole life. So I've never had a car payment that's been over, I think the highest was like $200 a month. So to me, the fact that people are having car payments that are over $700, that's insane to me. Like that's someone's half of the rent, $700. That's crazy, you guys. So the auto industry here, what they're doing, I believe, is they've been jacking up these payments. Remember, the payments actually come from the banks, but they have been jacking up those prices for the auto loans, almost in a sense like to make up for the money that they lost during the pandemic. Because let's be real, how many people were going out buying brand new cars during the pandemic in 2020? How many people were doing that? So it almost seems like they increased the price of the auto loans, at least the monthly payment, to make up for that. But that is insane for someone to have to pay $700 a month for what is this car? What is this car? A Mercedes? That's wild.
That's absolutely unbelievable. And most vehicles, the average, this is what's insane. The average auto loan right now is 125% loan to value. So if the car is worth, let's just call it $50,000, they have $62,500 essentially in existing debt on this. So that's pretty crazy, right? It's pretty crazy. Now you might ask, how is that possible? How is that happening? It's very simple. They'll see a sign on the side of the road, or they'll see an ad online, and they'll go there and say, look, we're going to roll in taxes, tags, dealer fees. We're going to roll everything into the loan, and you just sign here. And so back in 2020 and 2021, when there was unlimited stimulus, PPP loans, so much money flowing around, everyone felt rich, crypto, stocks, everything was doing great, Airbnb, people were making money hand over fist. And so for someone to sign on the dotted line for, an $800, $900, $1,000 car payment didn't really make a big deal. Wasn't a big problem. But now we're seeing the entire economy coming back to reality, and it's a really, really big issue for a lot of these borrowers. And you're seeing it right now with the Fed data showing consumer savings rate plummeting to the great financial crisis levels. That's a very, very, very big problem, because during the great financial crisis, inflation was 2%, 3%. It wasn't a horrible situation like we're in now, where many people would say that inflation might be 15% or 20%.
Nope.
Well, as that's continuing to happen, consumers, 69% of Americans in urban areas are living paycheck to paycheck. 69%. The job market for better educated and higher skilled workers has come to a grinding halt. Now, what many people don't realize, a lot of people talking about student loans, a lot of people talking about the housing market, but the most important market is going to be the auto market, because without a car, no one can work.
And let's pause right there. And this brings up the issue of public transportation. Because one of the reasons why, I am a strong advocate for public transportation, and I think every city in this country should have access to public transportation, is because I know what it's like not to have a car. There was a time when I didn't have a car, and I lived in South Carolina, and we did not have public transportation. And so I had to either get a ride from someone, or I would walk to work. Not everybody can afford a vehicle. This is just the reality. And one of the things, like living in the city, like when I lived in New York City, this was not an issue. In fact, I lived in New York City. Most people I knew didn't own a car. Most people I knew just took the subway, right? A lot of people I know that live in Boston don't own a car. They just take the subway. But the problem that we have, particularly in this country, is that we don't have access to public transportation across the board. So if you live in an area that doesn't have public transportation, you need a vehicle. So if you lose your car, if your car is repossessed, you are screwed. What are you supposed to do? So nowadays you can take Uber, right? Or you can take Lyft. You can take Uber or Lyft, but that's expensive and it adds up. Imagine if you have to take Uber and Lyft every day back and forth to work. Some people have to do that. Some people do that.
And without working, obviously you're not going to be able to pay rent, you're not going to be able to pay everything else. It's the first domino to fall. And this is now really starting to open itself up to being one of the biggest bubbles in U.S. history. Car insurance rates have also increased roughly 14% in 2023. So you think about it. In 2006, 2007, even, $300, $400 car payment, not a big deal back then. You had affordable car insurance, $50 a month, $75 a month. Now you're seeing $150, $200 a month car insurance, sky high monthly payment on the vehicle, sky high gas prices, everything is through the roof. Average person is probably spending $1,500 a month to drive a car.
And why? And this is another question I want to ask you guys. Why do you think the insurance rates are higher now? Are people having more accidents? Have the rate of accidents increased in the United States compared to 2006 or whatever? No, it's because, again, these companies are trying to make more money. Some of it is related to the pandemic, but some of it is just greed. I'm just keeping it real. So if you have a high insurance payment and you have a high car payment and gas is high right now because of inflation, if you're struggling or you're strapped for cash and it's time to pay bills, which one are you going to let go? You can only go so long without paying the electricity bill before they turn it off. You're going to have to try to find a way to pay your rent because you need a place over your head. So the car payments is usually probably one of the first ones to go.
It's unbelievable. You think about it, $725 just for the vehicle. You have $200 give or take for the insurance. That's $925. Then maybe $50 a month or $50 a week for gas, right? So you're already now factoring in, $1125 plus repairs, maintenance, oil changes, things like that. And that's for the average person.
Yep.
That's for the average. 17% of a car payment over $1,000 a month. So if you start to look at this, it's a really, really big problem. Auto insurance premium drives 17% in 2023. Now, when you're looking at a situation like you saw in Hawaii, like you saw in Canada, these disasters that are happening, you see it in California, it's happening all over the place. What does this mean? It means insurance companies are suffering massive losses. And because of these losses, what are they going to do? They're going to push it on to consumers. So people with these car payments that they can barely afford now, it's going to get harder and harder and harder to maintain as it comes time to renew insurance. This is a very, very, very big problem right here. It says car insurance premiums are skyrocketing primarily due to rising auto parts and extreme weather.
Now, let me pause there. Would the auto parts issue, would this be such a problem if we still produced and made all of the auto parts in the United States? Yeah, we have inflation, everything is increased, but that's something I do want you to think about, especially depending on what type of vehicle you have. If you have like a BMW, you might have to get certain parts like imported, right? So that's something to think about. Now, some people may see this and just think, okay, well, people should not buy a new car, not buy expensive cars. The problem is, whether you buy a new car or a used car, this is still an issue. This is still an issue. I don't think the average American is trying to go buy a brand new expensive car. I think the average American is trying to buy a car that they can afford the monthly payments for. Yeah, there may be some people here and there that may purchase something that they may not be able to pay for because they just purchasing what they think is really nice or whatever. But for the most part, the average American is trying to get what they can afford, and they're trying to get a vehicle to get them from point A to point B. But these insurance companies, they're making a fortune, man.
Extreme weather. This is what's going to happen. Look at what gas prices were in 2019, 2018, 2017. $2 a gallon, $3 a gallon, not even $3. The highest, 2018 was $2.92, right? $2.92. Now you're going out, and how much is gas? $4, right? $3.98. So
in some places, $5 and $6. So if you guys want to see, I'm not going to play the entire video, but if you want to see the full video, it's called Millions of Cars Just Repossessed, Car Crisis of 2023. And that is, this is John Williams. So he talks a lot about, you know, what's really happening with the economy. So definitely go check that out and see the full video. But the thing is, a lot of people in this country, most people in this country live in a place where they need a vehicle at least to get to work. And this is another thing. We can't always pick and choose where we're hired. So there are some people that have to commute an hour away or 30 minutes away, hour away, some people more than an hour. So you need that vehicle. So there are a lot of things that are happening here all at once. But the point that I want to stress is that we do have a financial crisis, regardless of what Joe Biden is telling you. And he's trying to make you think, oh, the economy is so much better and everything's great. A lot of people are lying to you right now, but you know the truth. You know what it's like when you look at your bank account. You know what it's like when you see the money leaving your wallet and you don't have anything left. You know what's really going on out there. So what I'm saying is this. When people use the argument today and they say that Joe Biden created all these jobs, companies are increasing salaries. Like I saw postings for now they want like admin assistants. Some of these companies are willing to pay $40 an hour, right? Which means they could have done that all along. But anyway, does that really matter in the context of things if everything else has increased? That also includes health insurance premiums too. So when you add all those things together, are you really making as much as you think you are? So we have a problem. And a lot of people aren't talking about it. A lot of people are screaming Joe Biden's talking points, and they're saying Joe Biden's doing great things for the economy. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. It's not just the housing issue. It's not just the housing crisis. It's not just the student loan debt crisis. We also have a car repossession crisis happening in this country. And I think a lot of people don't know about it. Let's go to some of the comments. Thank you for the super chat, Roger. Did you put it off because your paycheck was under water? Donna says, Sabrina, did all the people who lost their jobs refusing to get a jab get rehired like they did the police in New York? I have no idea. I know at my former employer, it was required. I don't know if it's still required there now. I mean, I don't work at BU anymore, but it was required at BU. Notary says, I keep hearing tow truck taking back cars lately. It sucks. EMK, it's a scam. The insurance companies are bribing the politicians to not switch the game through the campaign donations. And Marco says, we need a co-op version of all these companies, cars and insurance. I agree. Let's go to that comment on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you so much for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. 12 trillion mortgage debt, 1.8 trillion student debt, 1.5 trillion auto loan debt, 1 trillion credit card debt. The answer to this, set the minimum wage to stay permanently above cost of living or inflation, whichever one is higher to make it dynamic. Give small to medium-sized businesses 85% to 100% tax rebate subsidy to cover labor costs. Also, outlaw speculation and charter public banks to boost credit unions. And thank you for this as well. Repossession literally happened to me due to unpaid parking tickets I couldn't pay with a paycheck under H2O. The other car I was renting from a third party to drive Uber in New York City. The car was costing me $2,400 to $2,800 a month just to drive Uber in New York City. who deactivated my account 2 Wednesdays ago. On that Long Island RR to Queens, then back to start new driving job in 2 hours for Revel Transit, New York City, W-2 with benefits. Wish me luck. Well, good luck there, Roger. Good luck. And thank you for this as well. Yes, it is costing me money to make money driving Uber. Yeah, that's the thing. That's another thing too. If you want to work for Uber and you don't have a car. And thank you for the super chat, Delthea. A big problem is the business practices of JIT, just in time inventory. The idea being that you save costs by not having to store inventory. It works as long as your delivery lines aren't stopped. Interesting. All right, I'm doing good on time. We're going to jump into this next story here about Joe Biden. So if you did not see this, Joe Biden did finally address the nation last night in reference to Israel and Palestine and also the conflict with Russia and Ukraine. I want to go ahead and forewarn you, Joe Biden is already getting pushback in reference to his address that he gave to Americans. And I want to show you something else too, that a lot of young people are not buying this, guys. And I give shout out to the younger peeps for knowing what's up. But a lot of them are not buying this. They are shaking their heads. And Joe Biden is getting criticism. Will it affect him in 2024? Let's go ahead and get into this address from Joe Biden about the two conflicts that started under his administration.
We're facing an inflection point in history. One of those moments where the decisions we make today are going to determine the future for decades to come. That's what I'd like to talk with you about tonight. Early this morning, I returned from Israel. They tell me I'm the first American president to travel there during the war. I met with the prime minister and members of his cabinet. And most movingly, I met with Israelis who had personally lived through horrific horror of the attack by Hamas on the 7th of October. More than 1,300 people slaughtered in Israel, including at least 32 American citizens. Scores of innocents, from infants to the elderly grandparents, Israelis, Americans taken hostage. As I told the families of Americans being held captive by Hamas, we're pursuing every avenue to bring their loved ones home.
Let's pause here for just a second. Notice who he mentions first. And a lot of people are doing this, by the way. A lot of people are doing this. Let's continue.
As president, there is no higher priority for me than the safety of Americans held hostage. The terrorist group Hamas unleashed pure, unadulterated evil in the world. But sadly, the Jewish people know perhaps better than anyone that there is no limit to the depravity of people when they want to inflict pain on others. In Israel, I saw people who are strong, determined, resilient, and also angry, in shock, and in deep, deep pain. I also spoke with President Abbas, the Palestinian Authority, and reiterated that the United States remains committed to the Palestinian people's right to dignity and to self-determination.
Here's the first lie. If the United States government is committed to the Palestinian people's right to dignity and self-determination, why is the U.S. government funding Israel? First lie. We are 1 minute, 31 seconds in. We'll give them a buffer because someone was talking right before them. They introduced them. So let's say 1 minute, 40 seconds in. It is very clear. Like, you are not for someone's right for self-determination and their dignity if you support the government and this very state that is oppressing the people, that is occupying the people, and that has essentially established an apartheid state. How can they have any type of dignity? How do you have dignity and self-determination when all the resources are controlled by the group that's oppressing you? How do you have dignity and right to self-determination when 95% of the water that's supplied to you by the group that's oppressing you is dirty water. It's unclean. How do you have the right to self-determination and dignity when the state of Israel also controls the food that comes into Gaza, and they pick and choose what you get to eat and what you don't get to eat? And when you make them mad, they can decide to cut it all off. How? How does that give you dignity? How does it give you dignity to know that you're only allowed to have maybe 2 to 3 hours of electricity every day? And that's if they decide not to cut it off. How does that give you dignity? That's not dignity. How do you hold your head up high, knowing that you are constantly being oppressed? Knowing that you can't even leave within a certain mile radius, that there's a gate, there's a fence surrounding you, that you're not allowed to exit without approval. How do you live in dignity when you're being oppressed? Let's continue. There's more.
The actions of Hamas terrorists don't take that right away. Like so many other, I'm heartbroken by the tragic loss of Palestinian life, including the explosion at the hospital in Gaza, which was not done by the Israelis. We mourn.
Did you see that part? Notice how he added that part in? There's been conflict over who did the hospital thing. Like, different news outlets have reported different stories. I'm not even going to touch that one because the story changes with that every day. But there have been churches. The churches have been bombed in Gaza where people were seeking refuge and shelter. Just innocent people.
Every innocent life lost. We can't ignore the humanity of innocent Palestinians who only want to live in peace and have an opportunity. You know, the assault on Israel echoes nearly 20 months of war, tragedy, and brutality.
Let's pause here. He said the people who only want to live in peace. Actually, let's go back to that part. Right about there. Sorry.
Every innocent life lost. We can't ignore the humanity of innocent Palestinians who only want to live in peace and have an opportunity.
Is that all they want? Only want to live in peace and have an opportunity. I think they don't want to be occupied and oppressed. I think they want clean water. I think they want to have the same amount of electricity that the state of Israel has. I think they want to have the right to pick their own food. I think they want to have the right to be free and to not be fenced in. What are you talking about peace? How do you have the peace? Well, you can only move from point A to point B. You mean to tell me, Joe Biden, that's all they want? All they want is just to have peace?
You know, the assault on Israel echoes nearly 20 months of war, tragedy, and brutality inflicted on the people of Ukraine, people that were very badly hurt since Putin launched his all-out invasion. We've not forgotten the mass graves, the bodies found bearing signs of torture, rape used as a weapon by the Russians, and thousands of Ukrainian children forcibly taken into Russia, stolen from their parents. It's sick. Hamas and
no mention of the Azov battalion.
Putin represent different threats, but they share this in common. They both want to completely annihilate a neighboring democracy, completely annihilate it.
Let's talk about annihilating a neighboring democracy. Who has been pushed out of Israel? Who did the pushing? It was Palestine first. You can see it. We've brought up the maps on the show multiple times. You can see just how the people have been colonized.
Hamas' stated purpose for existing is the destruction of the state of Israel and the murder of Jewish people. Hamas does not represent the Palestinian people. Hamas uses Palestinian civilians as human shields, and innocent Palestinian families are suffering.
Let's talk about human shields. When he says, because this is important to know, when you hear people keep saying they're using them as human shields, that actually helps mainstream media push the narrative, and it helps the US government push the narrative that basically Hamas is hiding among the civilians. And that gives the state of Israel an excuse to attack places like the churches. Because that's the rhetoric that CNN and MSNBC, all of them, that's the rhetoric that they're using. They're saying, well, they had to attack those places because Hamas is hiding among the civilians. That's why they keep saying that phrase, human shields. They all have the same vocabulary, the same narrative.
Greatly because of them. Meanwhile, Putin denies Ukraine has or ever had real statehood. He claims the Soviet Union created Ukraine. And just 2 weeks ago, he told the world that if the United States and our allies withdraw, and if the United States withdraw, our allies will as well, military support for Ukraine would have, quote, a week left to live, but we're not withdrawing. I know these conflicts can seem far away. And it's natural to ask, why does this matter to America? So let me share with you why making sure Israel and Ukraine succeed is vital for America's national security.
In other words, Joe Biden is going to continue to give more money to Ukraine and more money to Israel and no money to you.
You know, history has taught us that when terrorists don't pay a price for their terror, when dictators don't pay a price for their aggression, they cause more chaos and death and more destruction. They keep going, and the cost and the threats to America and the world keep rising. So if we don't stop Putin's appetite for power and control in Ukraine, he won't limit himself just to Ukraine.
I'm going to use that same context there and I'm going to flip it, right? If we don't stop Netanyahu's power and his goal to suppress and oppress what's left of the Palestinian population in Israel, he won't stop there. You see, this is one of the things that the Palestinian Network did tell us at RBN when we interviewed them over a year ago. They said the goal is not to stop with Palestine. They said the goal is to spread even into Jordan. And let's remember, when we talk about Russia and Ukraine, we always have to go back to the Minsk Accords. We always have to go back to the fact that NATO was not supposed to expand in that direction. So NATO pushed this war. They pushed it. This didn't happen overnight. Joe Biden is not going to say that. He's not going to acknowledge that because he has to have an excuse to go to war. They're warmongers. Not even on his second term, and he's already has the U.S. government involved in 2 international conflicts, giving millions and millions of dollars abroad. And I just told you the homelessness population has increased under Joe Biden. We don't have money to give everybody health care in this country, but we got millions of dollars to contribute to war.
Putin's already threatened to remind Poland that their Western land was a gift from Russia. One of his top advisors, a former president of Russia, has called Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania Russia's Baltic provinces. These are all NATO allies. For 75 years, NATO has kept peace in Europe. And
NATO, he says NATO has kept peace in Europe. So we're just going to forget that this conflict with Russia and Ukraine didn't start years ago? Back in 2014? We're just going to forget that it didn't start then? NATO was like a troll. It's like, you're just going about your business, having a good day, and NATO just drops in your DMs and with some bullshit just to piss you off. That's what NATO reminds me of. NATO was like a troll. Trolls don't like to go away.
Been the cornerstone of American security. And if Putin attacks a NATO ally, We will defend every inch of NATO which the treaty requires and calls for. We'll have something that we do not seek. Make it clear, we do not seek. We do not seek to have American troops fighting in Russia or fighting against Russia. Beyond
Hold them to that.
Europe, we know that our allies, and maybe most importantly our adversaries and competitors, are watching. They're watching our response in Ukraine as well. And if we walk away and let Putin erase Ukraine's independence, would-be aggressors around the world would be emboldened to try the same. The risk of conflict and chaos could spread in other parts of the world.
This is the excuse they always use, that if we don't try to contain this person, this can spread, and that's the danger. That's the same excuse they used in reference to communism going back to Vietnam. That's the same excuse they used in reference to Saddam Hussein, who they said had weapons of mass destruction, only he did not. Getting us into the war, the same excuse they used with the war in Iraq. This is the same excuse that they use. If we don't contain it, it can spread. Other leaders can start doing the same thing. Same excuses that they use. Oh, and in reference to independence, he said that Putin doesn't want Ukraine to have like independence. Zelensky doesn't want the citizens in Ukraine to have independence because Zelensky has already threatened not to hold democratic elections anymore, but it's supposed to be a democracy. And this is one of those things that, again, Biden's not going to tell you, and people supporting Joe Biden is not going to tell you, is the fact that how can you sit up there and continue to call Ukraine a democracy? And you know damn well, if you're reading the news, if you're paying attention, Zelensky has already made public statements that he's not going to have like these democratic elections anymore. He's just going to pick people, just do whatever the fuck he wants to do. That's not a democracy.
In the Indo-Pacific, in the Middle East, especially in the Middle East, Iran is supporting Russia's in Ukraine, and it's supporting Hamas and other terrorist groups in the region, and will continue to hold them accountable, I might add. The United States and our partners across the region are working.
He said right there, he said who Iran is choosing to support, and pay attention to what he snuck in there. We will continue to hold them accountable. And I said this before, and I'll say it again. I really do believe that Joe Biden is going to try to use the conflict between Israel and Palestine as an excuse to start a war with Iran. I really do believe that's the next step. So stay tuned with that. They've been wanting this anyway.
Working to build a better future for the Middle East. One where the Middle East is more stable, better connected to its neighbors, and through innovative projects like the India-Middle East-Europe Rail Corridor that I announced this year at the summit of the world's biggest economies.
Why are you looking to control what happens in the Middle East? Not your countries, not your countries at all.
More predictable markets, more employment, less rage, less grievances, less war when connected. It benefits the people who would benefit the people of the Middle East and will benefit us. American leadership is what holds the world together.
Here it is, folks. Here it is. This is what it's all about.
The Europe Rail Corridor that I announced this year at the summit of the world's biggest economies. More predictable markets, more employment, less rage, less grievances, less war when connected. It benefits the people who would benefit the people of the Middle East and will benefit us.
That's what it's all about. It benefits the people and it will benefit us. It's about what benefits the United States. That's what this is about. He's letting the cat out of the bag. Like I said, people are really coming after him after this address.
American leadership is what holds the world together. American alliances are what keep us, America, safe. American values are what make us a partner that other nations want to work with. To put all that at risk, if we walk away from Ukraine, we turn our backs on Israel, it's just not worth it. That's why tomorrow I'm going to send to Congress an urgent budget request to fund America's national security needs, to support our critical partners, including Israel and Ukraine. is a smart investment that's going to pay dividends for American security for generations.
So he's going to send an emergency request to Congress to increase this budget. But there never is an emergency request sent to Congress to give us the needs that we need. Where was the emergency request to send millions and millions of dollars to people in Maui? Screw the $700. Where was the emergency request to send millions of dollars to people in East Palestine, Ohio, who are still breathing in toxic air, by the way? No emergency request. Where was the emergency request for the people in Jackson, Mississippi who had brown water coming out of their faucets? The emergency request for people in Flint who had to drink and deal with dirty water for years while local officials went unpunished. The emergency requests are not for us. The emergency requests are for the countries abroad that fit and suit the interests of the U.S. government, corporate greed, and the military industrial complex. That is when the urgency comes in for our government, not for the people. And you know what? You know who made it this way? What made it this way? Money. Super PACs, PACs. Allowing corporate money into electoral politics was the biggest mistake. Biggest mistake. We're going to show you something about that in reference to Richie Torres later on tonight, where politicians will no longer be holding to their constituents. Politicians now belong to and are owned by their donors and the military industrial complex. That's what made it this way. We need public financing of all elections, all of it. We need the corporate money out. We need the military industrial complex out. We need all of it out. All of it. And honestly, if I had it my way, my wish, my dream, get the corporate money out, do public financing of all elections. And honestly, everybody that's sitting in the House, everybody that's sitting in the Senate, all of them got to go and start anew. A whole new crew. A whole new crew in the House, a whole new crew in the Senate. All of them got to go. They're too corrupt. They've been there too long. Some of them been there so long, they don't even remember when they started. Some of them been there so long, they just can't remember. When did I come in here? When you got senators and congressmen and women, 80 years old, 90 years old, well past retirement age, just holding up a seat to keep the status quo. All of them got to go. Replace all of them. You got to start anew. You see, this was a mistake with Justice Democrats, putting them into a snake-infested pit. You got to get all the snakes out the pit. All of them got to go. Because they're all corrupt. And you need to start with a whole new crew. That's what I'd do if it was my way. And they wouldn't be a part of these parties. It wouldn't be, we got to get this many Democrats, this Republican. No, get rid of the parties. Get rid of the money. And start anew.
Help us keep American troops out of harm's way. Help us build a world that is safer, more peaceful, more prosperous for our children and grandchildren. In Israel, we must make sure that they have what they need to protect their people today and always. The security package I'm sending to Congress and asking Congress to do is an unprecedented commitment to Israel's security that will sharpen Israel's qualitative military edge, which we've committed to, the qualitative military edge. We're going to make sure Iron Dome continues to guard the skies over Israel. We're going to make sure other hostile actors in the region know that Israel is stronger than ever and prevent this conflict from spreading.
That's the goal, just to make sure that Israel's stronger than ever. They're going to continue to fund the Iron Dome. This is why AOC's vote, Jamal Bowman's vote, this is why it was so problematic at that point in time. Continue to fund the Iron Dome to protect Israel's skies. Nothing to protect the skies of Gaza or the West Bank. We're going to stop it here because I have other videos to get into. Because he was getting ratioed for this. Like, people are not happy. Even News Nation came after this. This video here, they said Biden's address sent mixed messages. Let's get into this from News Nation.
Sean Spicer is with us. He's the former White House press secretary under President Trump. He's also a News Nation contributor. And Johanna Mosca. She's a News Nation political contributor who previously served as President Obama's White House director of press advance. Sean, take it away.
He could have won tonight. The imminent issue facing us is supporting Israel. If he had focused on that tonight, every Republican would have put out a statement saying, I agree with the president on our need to support our ally Israel tonight. We need to give them the support, the weaponry, etc., the funding they need to defeat Hamas. Full stop.
Interrupting him right here and says, notice he says every Republican would have came out and supported him if he made that statement. The Democrats would have done so too. This is not a partisan issue. In reference to supporting Israel, the Democrats are doing it too. There's a few in the House that have spoken out against it. Very, very, very few. But the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are both on board for this.
Stop. I was there. I'm reading this just from a communication standpoint. And this is, you've made my point, though. You keep talking about how he mixed in Ukraine. Yeah. I agree with you. I actually think that's the point. This is, he mixed messages. I was listening to the speech saying, what do you want me to be for? Because you're telling me on one hand that I've got to be for Israel. Then you're telling me that we've got weapons, that we're backfilling Ukraine. We've got to stand up to Putin. And I'm like, for 17 minutes, he was all over the place. Tonight, if he had gotten up saying, I just returned from Israel, they are under attack, they are our closest ally, this is why we need to do it, you would have had universal...
Look, you make a totally fair point.
Thank
all
you.
right? No, and I agree with a lot of...
They could have let him finish, but I want to jump in and say this part right here. He's mad because Biden also brought in Ukraine. The reason Biden brought in Ukraine is because there's been a lot of pushback with people saying, can the U.S. actually support two wars at this point in time, right? So that's why he brought back in Ukraine. And then also Zelensky has been whining and complaining and saying all the attention is taken off of him now. Can you believe this guy? How are you going to continue to support me? Now you're involved. It's all about this country now and not about my country anymore. So that's why he brought it up and brought it in there. But what Spicer is letting you know is that with his particular side, they're all in for it, for Israel. But once you bring in Ukraine, it's a no. And I said this before. The same people saying, no funding to Ukraine. You change the country to Israel, and they're like, yeah, let's do it. Let's continue.
What you're saying. But don't you agree with me? You make the point that if he had just come out talking about Israel, Republicans would not have come out supporting
Yes, they would.
Fox News would not have done an analysis saying, bravo. Because, by the way, Brit Hume tonight on Fox talked about how great he thought the speech was. I didn't think it was that great. But that's
I'm just saying, but here's my point. Ukraine's been going on for months. He could have given the Ukraine speech anytime. Right now, America needs to be united with Israel and what's going on and against the terrorist barbaric actions of Hamas. Full stop. You could have done that Ukrainian speech anytime. It was like, hey, let's add it in.
All right. Look, Johanna, I agree with Sean on that point. But here's the point that I want to make is I don't believe that Republicans would have come out if he'd given the speech that both Sean and I think he probably should have given. I do not think they would have come out and said, oh, good for President Biden. We support him here. It just seems we're in this environment where you just can't do that.
It really is. I wish I was there with you guys in person. We'd have so much fun debating this. But but Sean, I think that, the president has never sent a tingle up any moderator or any Democrat or Republican's legs. That's not what he does when he speaks. But he has been very consistent on this. He believes that this is a precipice, that there's a clash between democracies and autocracies. And he very much believes that Putin is behind very much. Iran, yes, an actor, Hamas, Hezbollah, all of this is intertwined. And he is making the case that all of this is intertwined and that the U.S. needs to stand strong. Now, you and I have both traveled with presidents around the world, and I never want to see a world where America is not the superpower.
You heard that? Because this is what they want. These people are war hawks. She's from the Obama administration. He's from the Trump administration. These people are just war hawks. They want America to always be the superpower. They don't want any other country to have that spot. And any other country that they think is going to be a threat, oh, they're just going to try to take them out. They'll demonize them first, try to get more Americans on board with the fact that this is a bad country. So they'll demonize them and smear them first. And then they'll find an excuse, find a reason to start a conflict with them. And they don't always have to have a reason either. We'll play a little bit more here.
Of America as a superpower because we are more right and we are more just than any of these autocracies are. Now, how
we are more right and we are more just than any of the other autocracies. You guys see, you hear this rhetoric? We're more right and more just than any of the other countries, you guys.
How we're going to get there, I think, is an absolute debate the Republicans and Democrats need to have. Whether Ukraine and Israel are all intertwined and how we take every action, including sanctions, against them, I am for that debate. But the problem is right now, we've got a House that doesn't even have a speaker. So this is a real problem that we're in this back and forth fighting. The majority of us all agree that we should have these fundings. If the extremes of the left were controlling our party, we wouldn't have a funding bill either.
I think my point is
the extremes of the left.
Now the extreme of the right is controlling the party. If we came to bipartisan consensus, we would have these funding bills.
The extremes of the rights. And what that tells you is they want to bring everybody into the center. That's what they want to do. Let me know if you find anything, Eric. Someone told me in the chat that Peter Dow actually issued a response in reference to Joe Biden's address, but I'm going to go to this video as well. CNN actually is being called out by Palestinians in Ramallah in the West Bank. Check this out, because see, people aren't falling for it. Now, this is Sarah Sidner. I want to remind you who Sarah Sidner is. Sarah Sidner is the same commentator who apologized about spreading the lie on CNN about the beheaded babies thing. She came back on Twitter and issued a public statement and said that she was incorrect. She's sorry about that, yada, yada. So just to tell you who this person is, I'm telling you that because when you hear what's said to her, I think you're going to understand why. Listen to this.
Journalists gathered here because this is kind of where the clashes happens. So, all right.
You are genocide supporters.
Okay,
you are not welcome here. Genocide supporters. Fuck CNN. Fuck CNN. Genocide supporters.
Okay, what he was saying is he was telling Sarah Sidner that CNN, that they are genocide supporters. You are not welcome here. So that's why I had to remind you who Sarah Sidner was. That's why I wanted you to hear that. Let me finish this.
All right. You see that people are very angry. They do not like the way in which that CNN has been reporting the story. You hear that. But we're fine. But what you are seeing is the heightened fear, anger, frustration with what's happening.
No, what you're seeing is people telling you the truth and letting you know that they understand that you are part of a propagandized network and they see you for what you really are, Sarah. That's what they're doing. They know, they've been paying attention. They've been watching. They know exactly what CNN is on. We can go ahead and put that video up, Eric. So apparently it was just brought to my attention. One of you in the chat said it, that apparently, I guess, Cornel West issued a response in reference to Joe Biden's address. So this wasn't planned. I'm going to go ahead and put this in here now. Here it is. So it says Cornel West Biden's Oval Office address was pathetic and a declaration of war. Listen to this. Let's go.
We need strong American leadership. Upon hearing the speech of President Biden yesterday, it was sad. It was disappointing. It was pathetic. At the very moment where we need to talk about ceasefire, we don't hear the word. At the very moment when we need to talk about diplomatic procedures for just peace, we see more a declaration of war. We find out over $100 billion for war. Oh, we can't find that when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to jobs with a living wage, when it comes to housing, when it comes to quality living of everyday people. We find it when it comes to war. Thank God we have fellow citizens like Jewish Voices for Peace, like Palestinian Voices, Arab Voices, Black Voices, Latino Voices that stand for principle, that stand against war and war making. Even Judge Paul on the inside resigns because he sees more war. Even Sister Cori Bush, even Sister Rashida Tlaib within the Democratic Party echo the deep concerns that I have. I believe that I've said over and over again, and I'll say it till the day I die, that a precious Palestinian baby has the same value as a precious Israeli baby, and a precious Israeli baby has the same value as a precious Palestinian baby. And when you look at the world through those lenses, it leads toward an indictment of what President Biden's talking about, an indictment of his policies that don't take seriously the equal status and equal dignity of Palestinians and Israelis. There will never be peace for precious Israelis without justice for precious Palestinians. That is the bottom line. We cannot live in denial any longer. So let us look for better vision, grander courage, and most importantly, American leadership that can bring us together based on principles rooted in the empowerment of poor and working people, rooted in the empowerment of the least of these. Yes, that's what grand American leadership is all about. And that's what I aspire to and attempt to enact.
So that was my first time seeing that, because I didn't know this had happened until who was it that said it in that? Marcos told me that this video was up. So that was my first time seeing it. And so I will say that I think that Dr. West did a really good job there. And also, it's something that needs to be said, because the reality is this: not once did Joe Biden call for any type of ceasefire. Not once did he's talking about peace, but you talking about you still gonna give them monies for bombs and shit. Get out of here, Joe. Get out of here. Now, I want to show you some of the hypocrisy. Now, Kim Iverson called this out in reference to this particular issue. And then I want to show you, where do most people stand in reference to this particular issue. I'm going to show you a poll from CBS YouGov. First, let's listen to what Kim Iverson said, what she discovered about the hypocrisy. Are you a hypocrite? Poll result says 30% of you are. Listen to this.
I did a poll today. We want to go ahead and put this poll up. Let's go ahead. I did a series of questions today on my Twitter account. Now, granted, my Twitter following is, right, I mean, every Twitter following is going to be skewed to the people that want to follow a particular person. I follow a variety of people, a lot of people I don't agree with, but I just follow them to get the variety of viewpoints. But you can pretty much safely assume that's typically not the situation. So I get it that this is a skewed poll. This is definitely not some scientific, well-done poll. I just wanted to put it out there and see how people answered. So this is a series of questions that I put out there today. Should the Palestinian people be disarmed is the question. And the majority of people said no, the Palestinian people should not be disarmed. Let's go to the next one. Follow-up question. Are you pro-gun rights? Are you a pro-gun rights American? So this is the question I wanted. If you think they should be disarmed, but you are a pro-Second Amendment American, that is an inconsistent, hypocritical viewpoint. And the people that said that they are pro-gun rights American, they said, yes, I am. And I voted no, that the Palestinian people should not be disarmed. So that's a consistent viewpoint. So your answer should be, yes, I am pro-Second Amendment, and no, they should not be disarmed. So 44%. So the majority of people are consistent in that viewpoint. The people that said, yes, I am a pro-Second Amendment American, and I voted yes, they should be disarmed. That is 30% of the people right there who are hypocritical. Because I'm just saying the Palestinian people. So 30.
So let's look at this. Listen to what she's saying. The first line, people said yes, and I voted no. That's actually the correct position if you say you are pro gun rights for American, right? But this bit right here, the 29.9%. Yes, and I voted yes. So yes, I am pro gun rights, and yes, I think the Palestinian people should be disarmed. What Kim is saying, that for the people who selected that second option, there's some hypocrisy here. Let me go back just a little bit.
The Palestinian people. So 30% are hypocrites right there. I should have gun rights, but you should not have gun rights. Okay.
Okay, people. So you know what that tells you? That tells you that even some of the people who took that poll that say, yes, we should have gun rights, they only want gun rights for certain people, right? So I wonder what would happen if you change the country. Now, how do most Americans feel in reference to this particular issue? Let's bring up this poll here from CBS YouGov. This is interesting, ladies and gentlemen. Should the U.S. send weapons/supplies to Israel? This is broken up by party. In the Democratic Party, 47% say they should. Independents, 45% say they should. And Republicans, 57% say they should. Who says should not? So when we say they should not send weapons supplies to Israel, 53% of Joe Biden's own party says they should not. The majority of Democrats said no. 55% of independents said they should not. The majority of independents said no. And then 43%, this is a big one, 43% of Republicans said they should not. Now, the majority of the Republicans said they should, but that is still a significant amount, that 43% for the Republican Party who said that they should not. The point is this, folks. When you look at the Democrats and the independents can go either way sometimes, right? Or third party. The majority of Democrats and independents said no. You should not be sending these supplies to them. There's another one. Should the U.S. send humanitarian aid to Palestinians in Gaza? 70% of Joe Biden's own party said they should. 59% of independents said they should. 41% of Republicans said they should. Even some of the Republicans, listen to this. Who says they should not send that aid? 30% of Dems, 41% of independents, 59% of Republicans. So what we're seeing is, yes, even still, the majority of Republicans don't want to send the aid to Palestinians in Gaza. And the majority of Republicans do want to send weapons to Israel. But still, you still have 41% of Republicans that said you should. The Democrats and the independents, the majority of those two groups said you should send the aid to Palestinians and you should not send weapons to Israel. What this tells me is that mainstream media has lost control of the narrative. This tells me that more Americans are awake and they know what the hell is really going on. And something like this poll has CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, the Biden administration. It has them shaking in their boots right now because they are starting to realize that more and more Americans, particularly the younger ones, are actually in support of the Palestinian people. And this could actually affect Joe Biden when we talk about the 2024 election. Something to think about, folks. Let me go to some of the comments here. Thank you, Old Crow, for the super chat. Just sending some love. Is it just me not being a conspiracy? But it seems like AICAP has almost complete control over the elected officials. Oh, did you mean APAC maybe? Maybe you meant APAC, but look, there's a lot of money with these PACs. Thank you, Jay. I question the intelligence of those who can watch this dangerous warmongering and still say with a straight face, but Trump. David says, don't forget Sabby. Maui just got a lousy $700. Yep. Thank you so much for the super sticker, Aaron. Cornelia says term limits for Congress and Senate and Supreme Courts. PPB now. Thank you, Nambians, for the super chat. Folks need to wake up, for we are 90 seconds to midnight. Soon we shall all be peering through the looking glass in horror. Thank you, Jay. The Chicago City Council just passed a resolution condemning Hamas and supporting Israel. We still have Ukraine flags flying downtown. The propagandizing is out, or excuse me, the propagandizing is of this city is complete. Or I think you mean, propagandizing of this city is complete. Thank you, Kush Renata. If you're Black and know Black history in the U.S. and can't sympathize with what it's like being a Palestinian right now, your curse word YouTube banned. Thank you, Jim. Gun right is more nuanced than that. The question was not, should guns be banned in the U.S.? You can be pro-gun and also pro some kind of control of weapons in the U.S. Yeah, but I think the point that Kim was trying to make is that it seems like some people kind of looked at that question as, I just mean for me. I just mean for me to have those rights, not everybody else. Thank you for the super chat. Stop sniffing kids. Oh, wow. It says, Sabby, you're the best. Oh, thank you so much. That's so sweet. That name, that's going to sit with me. I'll take the comment on Rockfin, Eric. Oh, man, that was going to follow me. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. I'll go even further than just getting corporate money out, but replace corporate with cooperatives. So now the money that finances political campaigns becomes democratized, more representative of the people. Ratify an amendment into U.S. Constitution saying that Congress must first ask the people before sending military weapons abroad by putting a congressional ballot initiative law before the people. I second that. We have no say in reference to where our tax dollars go. We really don't. Like, they just take our money and do whatever. You guys notice this? If you have not had a chance to do so, go ahead and smash that like button. That helps me out with the algo. Thank you very much, cuddly friends. And we're moving over to a not so cuddly friend, David Pakman. David Pakman, at one point in time, was a Bernie Sanders supporter, was for progressivism, I guess, so to speak. As time went by, David, I guess, got Trump derangement syndrome along with a couple others. And also, David realized it was definitely more lucrative to become a Biden pro, which is what David has decided to do. So David Pakman has kind of been roasted a little bit here on TikTok in reference to this particular issue with Israel and Palestine. And he's gone soft on that too, if you can imagine. Yes, he has. So this gentleman decides to correct David Pakman. And this has been kind of trending around, actually, this video, to correct him on these issues. And it's very obvious what David Pakman is trying to do here. Let's go ahead and get into that video.
The worst time to get a good deal is when you're losing a war. And at this point, it can't be said that Hamas is winning this thing for Palestinians. And if you go back to the 1947 partition plan, it was a 50-50 divide of the land, which at this point would be a fantastic deal, I believe, for Palestinians. They rejected it.
Can you believe those ungrateful Palestinians did not accept being colonized? The audacity.
Let's pause here for just a second. So first of all, I want to add something too. That's really funny, but I want to add something too. When he says that the Palestinians rejected it, when we talked about the 2002 Arab Peace Initiative, that actually was not the case. You see, this situation could have been settled in 2002. One of the things about the Arab Peace Initiative that it mentioned is the fact that there were certain things that were laid out, but in the end, it was actually the state of Israel that rejected it. They were the ones that decided not to move forward with it. It still exists. They can agree to this tomorrow. It's not like this agreement, this initiative just went away like out of nowhere, right? It's still there. But it was actually the state of Israel that rejected it. Let's go back to this dude. Let me go back just a little bit. But yeah, he's funny.
Did not accept being colonized. The audacity. In 1947, the UN General Assembly approved a resolution partitioning the British Mandate of Palestine into a Jewish state which incorporated 56% of Palestine, with an Arab state retaining 44%.
It was a 50-50 divide of the land.
It was not 50-50.
They rejected it.
Were the Palestinians asked about this? Did they have a say in what was going to happen to their land? No. This predictably started a war between the newly founded state of Israel and the surrounding Arab states. In the 1948 war, 250,000 Palestinians were forced from their homes and they fled to the Gaza Strip. Today, more than 70% of Gazans are refugees from that 1948 war. And
pause right there. This part is very important. More than 70% of them are refugees from that 1948 war. So this goes all the way back to 1948. This is the thing we were saying. So when people say, don't go that far back, talk about what's happening right now, talk about who attacked who first and who did this first. No, you have to go back to that. You have to start with the history so that people understand how they got here in the first place. Isn't this crazy? Because if you think about it, guys, what would you say? Like the fact that you have basically become a refugee on your own land. How does that happen? Let's continue. 1948 war.
Refugees from that 1948 war and their descendants. This is the good deal.
Fantastic deal.
This person is talking about.
They rejected it.
Does everybody read between the lines of what this person is trying to say? When an Israeli airstrike destroys a hospital, killing 500 innocent civilians as it did today, it's the Palestinians' fault. They should have accepted the terms of the agreement in 1948 and they wouldn't be in this mess.
The worst time to get a good deal is when you're losing a war.
Calling this a war is egregiously irresponsible. I cannot stress that enough. This is not a war. This is a genocide.
Would be a fantastic deal, I believe.
It would be like saying if the United States decided to annex the territory of Kansas and Nebraska for white European settlers, forcing the Native Americans out of that land and concentrating them into a camp in Oklahoma. Oh wait, that already did happen. But you know, if the Native Americans were granted one state in the United States of America,
at this point would be a fantastic deal.
That would be a fantastic deal today.
That's a good comparison because think about that. Like, would you feel that same way if we made those same statements about indigenous people in this country? If you're Native American, you're only allowed to live in North Dakota. And yes, Native Americans were put onto reservations. And that in itself, I feel like, okay, this is my gift to you after taking your land and slaughtering your people. You get this reservation and we'll give you a couple of casinos. That's also some BS. But David Pakman is actually trying to make it seem like what they were offering to the Palestinians in 1948 is a good thing. That's how far gone, man, I tell you.
Would anyone in their right mind today defend the American policy of apartheid towards the Native Americans, defend the ethnic cleansing, defend the genocide of the Native Americans today? No. Would anyone in their right mind victim shame the Cherokee, the Choctaw, the Sioux, the Chippewa, etc., for fighting back against colonialism? I don't think so. And yet, in essence, this is what this person is doing right now. This is just more liberal apologia in the service of power, in the service of empire. This take is not going to age well for this person.
And it didn't. It didn't age well. And there's more because he's also out here saying that Biden is actually functional as president. I can't tell you, guys, let's get into it.
Okay. We could not have a greater contrast right now between the chaos on the Republican side and the functional presidency of Joe Biden.
He's going too hard, trying too hard. And I honestly feel like David Pakman is trying to sell me something. Like, I feel like I'm watching an infomercial right now. Notice he's using that same word again: chaos, dysfunction. These are the word they're using for people who use that force the vote style, whether it's on the Republican side or the Democrat side. They decided to use that to their advantage. They decided to use that leverage. The squad decided not to. So because they decided to go against Republican leadership, pundits like David Pakman and also mainstream media pundits as well, they call that chaos because you didn't follow order. He's a little too excited. A little too excited.
And the Hamas-Israel fiasco could not be a greater illustration of this. Let me explain. On the Republican right, you currently have the likely presidential nominee, Donald Trump, embroiled in 4 criminal trials, at least one, I think it's maybe 2 civil trials. He's been found to be a civilly liable rapist. He's regularly attacking court personnel after being gagged by multiple judges.
We're just going to pretend like Joe Biden doesn't have a sexual assault accusations. This is my push for everybody who brings up that issue in reference to Donald Trump. You know, we don't know. This is not to say that Donald Trump is innocent, but what I'm saying is if you're going to bring up Donald Trump's accusations, you need to bring up Joe Biden's accusations as well. Hard sell, man.
A Republican House that should have a Speaker of the House, but they don't, and they can't seem to find one. Rebellion within the ranks. It's chaos. And on the Democratic side, we have a trip to the Middle East by Joe Biden that carried with it significant risk, both security risk and geopolitical risk.
It didn't carry no risk for Joe Biden. He's very well protected. He knew where he was going when he got there. It's not like he was going to visit, going to go visit Gaza in person on the ground. He was going into Israel. Stop.
And has been an incredible success because this is really Joe Biden's top area, international diplomacy and foreign relations. Joe Biden went to the Middle East yesterday, has now announced $100 million in humanitarian aid to Gaza and the West Bank, with the warning from Biden that Hamas damn well better not interfere with the delivery of the aid.
Why would Hamas interfere with the delivery of the aid? If anything, that would be Israel that would interfere with the delivery of the aid. Let me call out something here. Do people in Gaza and the West Bank need humanitarian aid? Absolutely. But the thing is this: why isn't Joe Biden pushing Netanyahu to release the restrictions on the Palestinian civilians, to release the restrictions in reference to the food and the water and the electricity? And what good is delivering humanitarian aid to those people going to do if they got to worry about getting bombed while they're sitting there eating the aid that you sent to them? What would be a big win, David, is for Joe Biden when he went over there to call for a ceasefire. That would actually be the big win. Not dropping off some packages. Because the thing is, humanitarian aid that's eventually going to run out. We don't know how long this conflict's going to last. That's eventually going to run out. Then what? Stop letting the state of Israel have all the resources and control all the resources, and this wouldn't be an issue. When Miko Palid was on the show, one of the things he said is like, even when they're trying to grow their own food in Gaza, like they've cut down their trees so that they can't grow, like the olive trees and all that stuff. Like, this is terrible. If he's really trying to be a big winner and a champion for the Palestinian people, call out the apartheid state. But you won't.
Joe Biden has also been able to participate in securing that Israel allow the entry of humanitarian aid to Gaza through Egypt after applying pressure to Israel. Another success for Joe Biden that we
The pressure would have never even happened if it wasn't for the pressure of the people on the street. The pressure came from the people who rose up across the world, not just in the US, and hit the freaking streets and called on Joe Biden to do something else. Called on Joe Biden to denounce this genocide, called on Joe Biden that you cannot let these people be treated this way. So mark my words, people, let's keep it very, very real. If it was not for the outside pressure on the streets, which David Pakman is trying to give credit to Joe Biden for, none of this would have happened. This would not happen. If it wasn't for the outside pressure of the people on the streets, you would not hear Joe Biden saying all Palestinians are not Hamas, because that's not what they were saying earlier. They had to change their rhetoric because people were calling them out.
Would not be seeing under someone like Donald Trump or whoever else. And then, like it or not, this is really Biden doing what he does best.
So what on foreign policy, doing what he does best, Joe Biden has allowed 2 different international conflicts, us to get involved in 2 international conflicts under his presidency, and he is not even in the second term. 2. Look at what has happened. But according to David, this is what Joe Biden does best.
Joe Biden is now structuring an aid deal to request $100 billion that will go towards Israel, Ukraine, and work on the southern border, which...
Look at this. Look at this. So you pro with the border now, David Pakman? This is what happens when you have to get up there and shill for Joe Biden. So David Pakman, his show has sponsorships, like for a show, right? He was always growing, but he grew a lot faster once he started to switch his position to shilling for Joe Biden than when he was promoting Bernie Sanders. And David Pakman actually started as a radio show here in Massachusetts. So this is what, look at how hard he has to go with this. Look at how hard. Kyle Kalinske done the same thing. This is what they doing. They got to go really hard and convince you that Joe Biden's doing such a good job. Crazy how some of these people have sold out.
Republicans claim is an absolute top issue. Now, you can say, I don't think these 3 things are worthy. I don't want any money going to what's going on in Israel or Ukraine or the border. You can say that. You can say, I don't like the strategy of bundling things together. Let's have an up and down vote on everything. I would agree with you. It's not the way politics works right now. Knowing how politics does work in the United States and how Republicans operate, this is Joe Biden realizing this is how I get everything done on this funding issue that I want to get done. Republicans resisting funding for Ukraine, Republicans wanting funding for U.S. border security, and Republicans mostly wanting money for Israel, but not necessarily for Gaza. But here's a package that will do something for everybody. And Joe Biden saying, let's do it all. This is 48 hours of some of the most functional and productive presidenting that we have seen in years. And meanwhile, you've got George Santos still as a member of Congress with 30 indictments against him. A former wrestling coach who allegedly worked to not deal with serial sexual assault while he was a wrestling coach, Jim Jordan, endorsed by...
Again, doesn't mention the sexual assault allegations against Joe Biden. See, you guys got to understand that David Pakman is very well off. We both live in the Boston area here in Massachusetts. He's very well off. In fact, to show you how many subs does he have now? Let me see. 1.9 subscribers. Mm-hmm. And he has it as the radio show. Like, David Pakman is very well off. He can afford to sit here and chill for Joe Biden. Joe Biden, what is he doing for the American people? A lot of these people, they don't bring this stuff up anymore that they championed back in 2016 and 2020 when Bernie and Elizabeth Warren was running. He was actually leaning more towards Elizabeth Warren in 2020. So he was already starting to, you know what I mean? But the thing is that you don't hear a lot of them talking about this stuff anymore. What about the Medicare for all? See, now all of a sudden those things don't matter because people like David are getting paid. Now that David Pakman is over 1 million subscribers and he's making a lot more money now those things don't matter. Now it's not important to have Medicare for all. It's not important for everyone to have health care in this country. See how that works?
Trump, but losing multiple votes. It is disarray in the Republican Party. And look at the accomplishment after accomplishment that in 24 to 48 hours, Joe Biden has achieved.
And this is how you can tell that he's really trying to sell you a lemon, is the fact that if Joe Biden was doing so great as he says he is, why is he struggling to get support? Why is it that the majority of Democrats don't want him to run again in 2024? These are all the polls. If he's doing so great. But this is what he has to sell you. He has to sell you this message.
There's very little else to say. And, you know, it would be nice if voters actually responded to what is taking place in the real world and observed this incredible and stunning contrast and voted on that basis. Instead, it's all, you know, contrived cultural issues and failed talking points and grievance politics. But
let me stop it right there and let me interrupt something because he did tick me off with this comment. The working class people who want a living wage, who want health care or want reliable health care, the people who want housing, who don't want to have to pay $2,000 a month for a tiny apartment anymore, the people who want to be able to get from point A to point B without having to pay expensive car payments that we talked about earlier tonight, or not have to worry about getting their car repossessed, not have to worry about not being able to pay their rent or their electric bill next month. Those people are not focused on culture war issues, David Pakman. Those people are focused on the economic issues and they're trying to figure out how they're going to get by next month. Those people are focused on how they're going to take care of these damn bills so they can keep a roof over their head. They're not talking about no damn culture war issues. David, you know who's talking about the issues, David? You are talking about the culture war issues. You're the one who brings it up. You're the one who's always saying it's about the Republicans versus the Democratic Party. You're the one who is overlooking the needs of the working class people in this country that you used to once give a fuck about. It's you talking about those things. How dare you sit here and make it seem like it's the voters' fault? No, it's people like you that have become very wealthy and now all of a sudden you don't give a fuck. That's what it's about. Goodbye, David. They kill me. They kill me. David Pakman, he reminds me of some of the people in Massachusetts that have that snobby Democrat, attitude, that snobby liberal bourgeoisie attitude. I'm smarter than you, and I know what I'm talking about, and I'm more educated, and I did this and da-da. And I have education too, just like David Pakman. But the difference is I know how to treat people like they are fucking people, and not that they are less than me or beneath me because I have education. That's the difference. I can't stand it. Bougie liberals. Now, Joe Biden is facing some difficulty in reference to this particular issue. This is something that David Pakman didn't want to show you. Biden walks a tightrope on Israel and Gaza as Democratic tensions smolder. The president has won bipartisan plaudits for his response to the war, and his trip to Israel offers a chance to appear statesmanlike. But anger on the left is growing as Israeli strikes pound Gaza. Now, this piece right here. Let me go down to this part. Sorry, it's a long article. The anger and confusion made clear just how precarious of a tightrope Mr. Biden is walking. This is delicate for him, said Representative Jasmine Crockett of Texas, a progressive Democrat who visited Israel with a congressional delegation this summer. It's a very fine line to walk, and it's one that a lot of us as members, especially progressive members, find ourselves having to try to balance. While Republicans who have offered surprising praise for Mr. Biden's response to the Hamas attack have largely cast the conflict as a black and white issue, things are more complicated among the progressive base of the Democratic Party. And I'm ended with that, and I'm going to pick back up with this article in a separate part for this last story. Let me go down here. Okay. Actually, yeah, I'm going to do that because this leads into the next story. Okay, let's get to the last story, which is Cornel West is attacked again. I know some of you guys are probably like, what happened this time? What happened this time, right? So this time, Cornel West is being attacked over funding. Now, this is not complex. We're going to get into the thick of it. But I want to start off with this statement from Waleed Shahid. Now, he's a former strategist for Justice Democrats. I want to show you something that he said and which sparked one of the attacks, which is from Nicole Hannah-Jones. Now, Waleed, he said this. Let me start right here. So Waleed, who was a strategist for Justice Democrats, a group that sponsored left-wing primary challenges to Democratic members of Congress, said Mr. Biden's embrace of Israel might drive young Muslim progressive voters away from Mr. Biden and toward Cornel West, the independent candidate for president who is running on a more explicitly anti-war platform. That's important because, so he shared that post on Twitter, what I just read to you basically, but he extends it and he says, there will be a non-insignificant number of Arabs, Muslims, and young voters who sit out 2024 or vote for Cornel West instead of Joe Biden in states like Michigan and Georgia, giving his near one-sided support of Netanyahu's far right government. Now, this is Nicole Hannah-Jones. Now, some of you may remember her because she actually had a tenure issue. Now, you would think that she would sympathize with Cornel West, given that they both had to go with this. She was denied tenure at the University of North Carolina, and she went to the press about it because she said that, like, basically they denied me tenure because of the project that I've been working on, or they don't agree with it, or obviously they felt like they already had their black person for their faculty. Now, these things do happen in higher ed. I've talked about this before. She went on to multiple interviews to talk about being denied tenure. Dr. West went through the same experience being denied tenure at Harvard. His reasoning was because his support of the Palestinian people. So Harvard was like, no, we're not going to give you tenure. So you'd think she'd be understanding. But Nicole Hannah-Jones is just another Democrat shill. She's another one, Biden supporter. Now, she had this project called the 1619 Project, which talks about like goes all the way back to through slavery and all of that. Like, so she's really good when it comes to those discussions about what happened to Black people historically and things that need repair. But a lot of these academics that are good with that particular issue, when it comes to criticizing the Democratic Party and how the Democratic Party has failed the Black community, they think that you're crazy to do that. She does not approve of Dr. West running third party. She doesn't approve of this third party independent stuff anyway. And she wants you to vote for the Democrats so that you don't get Donald Trump. So some of these academics, like I said before, they've written all these books about what we need to do or what happened to us as a Black community and how we need to move forward. They'll do all of that. But at the end of the day, the bag that they're getting, and I'm going to show you where her bag is coming from, the bag that they're getting tells them to remain in the status quo, and they're not going to move forward either. So she responded and she said, Cornel West, who's taking Harlan Crow money, not saying you're wrong, but it's trash. Now, Harlan Crow, we'll get into who he is right now, because there was an article that was published by Business Insider, and I want to show you. So they came after Cornel West about this. They said Harlan Crow, the GOP mega donor and pal to Clarence Thomas, maxed out his campaign donation to a self-described non-Marxist socialist trying to defeat Joe Biden. So just with the title alone, I think it's interesting that they're willing to point out who Harlan Crow is friends with, but they weren't willing to point out the fact of some of the relationships that Joe Biden had with people like Strom Thurmond. I think it's interesting that they're willing to call out donors in reference to Cornel West, but they ain't say nothing about the donors that Joe Biden has, and Joe Biden is taking corporate money. Let's go on. Here we go. Billionaire GOP mega donor Harlan Crow maxed out a donation to Cornel West, the progressive academic and 2024 independent presidential candidate, according to the latest FEC filings. The records show that Crow gave $3,300 to West in August, weeks before West switched from pursuing the Green Party presidential nomination to running as an independent. West in the past has labeled himself as a non-Marxist socialist, which would seemingly clash with the more conservative and pro-capitalist politics of Crow. So I'm going to offer a criticism on both sides with this part right here. Number one, as I've told you before, donors donate to people across different parties. Donors don't just say, I'm only going to donate to someone who's running as a Republican. They'll donate to Republicans. They'll donate to Democrats. They'll donate to independents. David Sachs is a great example of this. He's donated to RFK. He's donated to Vivek. He's donated, like they donate across, right? So that's the first thing. That being said, the second part, the fact that Harlan Crow is a billionaire. And so this is an individual donation to Dr. West's campaign. But the problem is the optics of it. I personally don't think you should take money from billionaires. Like, I've been very vocal about that. Cornel West did issue a statement. We'll get into that in a second. But Cornel West will say that, you know, this is not PAC money. This is coming from an individual person who I know, who I'm familiar with. But I think the problem that you're going to run into, and I sincerely hope, you know, Dr. West takes this into consideration. When people see that you're getting like those types of donations, like, for example, instead of the $27 donations that Bernie Sanders had, like the small donations, when people see that, it kind of can make people less willing to donate to you who are like working class. People who are working class are going to see that $3,300 from a billionaire, and they're going to say, well, he doesn't need my $27 or my $100 then. That's the problem I think you'll run into. One of the things that made Bernie Sanders' campaign so successful is the fact that he focused on those small dollar donations. That's where most of his money came from. When I donated to Bernie Sanders' campaign, I donated the smallest, that $27. That was what I would donate every time I donated to him. And so remember, during the 2020 campaign, at one point, Bernie Sanders had the most money out of all of the candidates that were running, and it was a grassroots campaign. So Bernie Sanders was able to raise a lot of money from those small dollar donations. What I'm saying is that when you have those types of levels, like the 3,000 and stuff like that, that can give other people the impression that you don't need our money. And then it makes us not feel willing to donate like a small dollar donation. Whereas when Bernie was getting donations from people, it was that, can you contribute just the $27 or the $10, like that kind of thing? Like you felt more pumped and motivated to do so. So I think it's really important. I will say this, even though I do think this is a smear piece, I will say this. I think that it's important that if you're running a campaign about working class issues and working class people, I think it's important that you have those dollar amounts that working class people can afford. That is one critique that I would give, because something like that can turn people off especially if they don't have that kind of money. It goes on to say, but Crow, in an April interview with the Wall Street Journal, described West as a professor emeritus at Princeton University and a former professor at Harvard University as a good friend. West, who has been critical of the Democratic Party despite his liberal positions, has drawn the ire of some Democrats who believe his candidacy could siphon off votes from President Joe Biden's reelection effort and aid his Republican challenger. But West is undeterred, pointing to some of the most urgent problems in American society that he feels remain unaddressed. During an interview in August on NBC's Meet the Press, West said that the two-party system in the U.S. was becoming an impediment for the flowering of American democracy. We've got too many fellow citizens, 63% living paycheck to paycheck, he told the network. I must say that it's hard to view oneself as a spoiler when there is an increasing rot in the system with two parties connected to big money, Wall Street, Silicon Valley, and militarism abroad. And this is what I was trying to warn. See, they will now take that statement and they'll use that against him, because they'll now say that, well, you took money from a billionaire, so you're connected to big money too. See, I know how people spend things. Even though that's an individual donation from one guy, the press will spin it in a way. Crow leapt onto the national stage after ProPublica in April published a major report that detailed how Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas had taken luxury vacations funded by the wealthy real estate developer for more than 20 years without disclosing the trips. Thomas, in response to revelations about previously undisclosed trips, said at the time that he was advised that it wasn't necessary to report this sort of personal hospitality. Okay, but that has nothing to do with Cornel West's campaign. So you see what they're trying to do. It goes on to say, in The Atlantic, Crow said that he wasn't a law guy and didn't discuss Supreme Court cases with Thomas, but largely conversed about Motown and sports with the conservative jurists. Crow late last month met with representatives from the presidential campaigns of Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley, as several major GOP donors are looking to get behind the strongest challenger to Donald Trump's presidential bid. So I told you guys more smear pieces will come out. Cornel West did issue a response, and I do want to get into that. He said, as an independent candidate and a free Black man, I accept donations within the limits of no PACs or corporate interest groups that have strings attached. I am unbought and unbossed. Despite my deep political differences with Brother Harlan Crow, who is an anti-Trump Republican, I've known him in a non-political setting for some years, and I pray for his precious family. I find it hypocritical For those who highlight his $3,300 donation to my campaign, but can't say a mumbling word about the PAC-driven $1 billion to support the genocidal attack in Gaza, sponsored by their candidate. I'm fighting for truth, justice, love, and onward. So that's the response there from Dr. West. And I would add in, to that as well, was the fact that, so now we care. So now mainstream media cares about where money comes from for these candidates, but they're not talking about where Joe Biden's money's coming from. They're not talking about where Trump's money's coming. They're not talking about any of that, but they're coming after Dr. West. I told you they're going to come after any little thing. But I will say again, I think that if you're trying to appeal to working class people, I think it is important that one thing I would take from Bernie's campaigns and apply it to like future campaigns is the small dollar donations, focusing on that, because that does encourage people to support you, particularly those that are working class. And it's just, I think what Dr. West may not see is it's just the optics. It's the optics of it, right? So they're going to try to anything. But speaking of optics, I thought it was really interesting because Nikole Hannah-Jones, again, I told you how she is and who she is. She had all those things to say about Dr. West and who he's taking money from. So let's just put this back up here to remind you. And she said, Cornel West, who's taking Harlan Crow money, not saying you're wrong, but it's trash. Well, Q Anthony actually called out Nikole Hannah-Jones to show who she's been taking money from. Now, this was the Emancipation Conversations lecture series, and it says right here, sponsored by Shell. And other people have pointed this out before too, that Nikole Hannah-Jones is taking money from Shell. So can I just show this here? And it has her name. Our first lecture features Nikole Hannah-Jones, an award-winning investigative reporter covering racial injustice for the New York Times and the architect of the 1619 Project. The landmark project marks the 400th anniversary of the arrival of the first ship carrying enslaved Africans to America. Again, sponsored by Shell. So this has been pointed out. So, I mean, again, the point is, like I said before, Nikole Hannah-Jones, like a lot of these academics, like I told you before, at the end of the day, they're still supporting the Democratic Party. So they're not like radical. She's liberal, like she's neoliberal, right? So she's taking money from Shell. So who is she to criticize Cornel West in reference to who he just got a donation from? So it's hypocritical. It's very hypocritical. And one more thing I want to share about Nikole too. I just want to show you the AP interview, Nikole Hannah-Jones warning on democracy. You see, she has the same talking points as the Democratic Party. And I just want to show you this part here. She reminds me of Kendi too, man. She reminds me of Kendi. So it says, New York Times writer began this year in a protracted tenure fight with her alma mater in North Carolina. The dispute ended when she announced in July that she'd take her talents to a historically Black university and is closing it as the nation best-selling author. So let me just show you where she brings up the democracy part, because that part was interesting. Hannah-Jones said the backlash to her work is evidence that the U.S. is approaching a make or break crossroads on its global standing as a democracy. I think that we are in a very frightening time. People who are much, much smarter than me, who have studied this much, much longer than I have, are ringing the alarm. I think we have to ask ourselves, the narrators, the storytellers, the journalists, are we ringing the alarm in the right way? Are we doing our jobs to try to uphold our democracy? So there you go, folks. She's using the same talking points as the Democratic Party. She's very much going to be against any opposition that she feels is not inside the Democratic Party, whether it's Dr. West or whoever. So I wanted to point that out. We'll bring in Eric. Eric, whenever you're ready, because I know Eric had something to say about this as well.
Hello. Yes. Happy Friday. We wanted to make sure. I'm not sure if it was in the tweet we showed or not, but they did end up like giving back the donation.
Do what?
The West campaign gave back the donation to.
They did?
Yeah.
Where is that?
Yeah, let me find it.
I didn't see that part. Sorry.
Yeah, I think it's right on his timeline. Let's see here.
Okay. I'll let you pull it up.
There's one below this one. No, that ain't it. There we go. Show. He said, how sad that perception so quickly triumphed over truth in our decadent culture. This holds in our major catastrophe in the Middle East, where the rich humanity of Palestinians is rendered invisible. It also holds at home in the minor scandal about Harlan Crow's donation to my campaign. He is a staunch anti-Trump. Anyways, about Harlan Crow. And then as a jazz man, I listened and decided to give the money back to Brother Harlan, but still state the truth. Was what the latest thing that was.
So he did give it back.
Yeah, I mean, in the scheme of things, I mean, it's a tiny sum in the scheme of in the scale of a national campaign. But I mean, what I would like to hear, getting back to like what's our core problem in this whole system, is that you have these very small number of billionaires and 100 millionaires, that top 0.1% at the very top, funneling these billions of dollars into the political system and into the whole system. You got media and the whole thing, but you especially see in the political system where they're supposed to represent us, and it's straight up corruption. And so I would urge Dr. West and the campaign to come back to that. So when you have someone like Harlan Crow, who, if you look up his history, his father is like described as at one point the largest landlord in the country. At one point, I mean, his father was a hugely wealthy man, and so it's the usual thing that we see with most billionaires is they're the white sons of white rich men, and so their very existence as a class is the problem. And so I would have liked to have seen Dr. West come back to that, to say that it's that his class is the problem. His having that much wealth and the huge wealth inequality is the problem. And it's not about whether or not he's a good guy or a Republican or not, or what he believes in. We can either have a good and decent and functional country with a real democracy, or we can have billionaires. I'd like to see the choices put in as stark as that. And so then, that gets you into focusing on the money and the corruption. And then you need to demand that we fix it, and you get into the solutions. So I'd love to see the campaign really focus on those things. And I know you've said the same thing as well. So I just wanted to pop in with that.
Yeah, I think those are really good points, That's a really good point. Like, yeah, I know me personally, if it was me, I wouldn't take donations from a billionaire, periods. Like these are the people that we're saying, billionaires shouldn't even exist. So
if they had put the donation buttons, or the max donation is like even like $500 or something, then this billionaire or whoever wouldn't have even been able to donate that much. And would they have done a news story if it was $500? It's like,
I'm pulling up the donate option now. I'm trying to see.
Yeah, they still have the big high number buttons in there, which is not a good look for a grassroots campaign.
Yeah, because see, this is the thing, like even with like the Bernie thing, and not saying it has to be exactly like Bernie's, but I wouldn't have that. I wouldn't have 3,300. I wouldn't, because see, that's the thing. You're going to get more like the $25. This is where a lot of people sat with Bernie. Like, this is where we were donating like $25, that kind of thing. But it's kind of discouraging if you come on here and you do see that $3,300. That can discourage some people, especially working class people, and say, well, if somebody's donating $3,000, why do you need money from me?
And if this campaign can get millions and millions and millions of people donating that $25, then we'll have something that the sky's the limit. And if they don't do that, then really, what's the point?
Yeah, just like Bernie's did. Bernie got most of his donations came from the small dollar amount, not the large dollar amount.
He made that a point in the campaign. $27 average donation.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
a
I would.
tagline, so.
Yeah, I mean, if it were me, I would just not. I wouldn't have. But that's it's not my campaign. So, but that's my take on that. I think we got to do.
You do the super chats and we're out, and I'll catch everybody later.
Yeah, because I do. Oh yeah, I'm 10 minutes over. Shoot, I got a hard stop. Sorry. Thank you, Devotion Orange. So grateful for you. Thank you. Thank you, Kush Renata. Possibly over 200 billion for two countries that, may I remind you, aren't in NATO. We're not obligated to do this. This over our rotting infrastructure. Good point. Thank you for the super sticker, Ivan. I think it's Ivan. Ivan. Thank you, sir. Bikes a lot day. Bless the Lord for no speaker and a government shutdown. Keep your prayers for PS. This is how God saves us. Also, car crashes are up. Oh, look up Chuck Moran. I'll check that out. Thank you, Aaron. Sabby, if Cornel West would have asked you to be his campaign manager, would you have accepted? No way Biden gets reelected. No, I have no campaign experience. None. Sorry that I'm not the person. Thank you, Roger. Is this fool under Joe's table? No wonder he's smiling. Thank you. Stop sniffing kids, Joe. It's a check for $200K for Joe Biden from his brother for working the Middle East using Joe Biden's name and influence. Terry says she's a plantation slave for capitalists. I guess you're talking about Nicole. And thank you, Frank. Sabby, didn't you say that Nicole and Kendi took money from those people? Which people? Oh, Shell? I mentioned Shell. I know Nicole took money from Shell. All right, guys, that's it. I do have a hard stop. I'm going to, I got plans to watch some scary, spooky stuff. So, I mean, it is October and it's about that time. So I am heading out, but thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I'll be back Sunday. So I'll be back on Sunday. But other than that, guys, have a good night. Keep up the fight.